So I spent the last 2 weeks trying to accommodate the two most expensive players in FPL. Let's see what I came up with. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. I know you're thinking, why is Haaland in your team? We're supposed to go without him for the season. But I've actually made a draft that I'm quite happy with. But before we get into that, quick sponsor, of course, Fantasy Football Scout, 40% off for the preseason, and they just launched a brand new app, so check it out. And also, if you find any of this useful, be sure to like and comment. Let me know your thoughts on this team because it is fairly interesting. So let's get into it. So like I said, this is a Haaland and Salah draft, and you'd probably think there's some compromises in certain positions, but it's actually quite solid all around. So I suppose we'll start between the sticks, which is Dean Henderson, Pedro Porro, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Aina in a back three. So let's start with Henderson. Henderson, out of all the 4.5 keepers, a lot of them have a load of question marks, especially with Chelsea signed new goalkeeper. Miguel, apparently his position is up for grabs with Sells. And even Henderson's position himself, because he's competing with the likes of Johnson, who, in my opinion, is first choice. So I feel like Henderson is most likely to be nailed out a lot. I think Johnson's coming back from an injury, but also Glasner kind of favoured Henderson because he was quite good for him. And in pre-season he even got an assist, which is of course not swaying me, but I do want a piece of that Crystal Palace defence. And I feel like defensively under Glasner last season they looked quite solid coming towards the end of the season. So I'm quite happy to start with him. Next is Pedro Porro. Recently I've seen him in a lot of people's drafts, and I started with him in my first draft, and I do really like him as a pick. 5.5 against Leicester away is a solid fixture, and he has Everton at home next game, which is also a great fixture. And I know he is Arsenal and United down the line, but I just feel like look, a player like Porro is getting in these positions. I've watched a lot of him pre-season, and positionally he's in great positions, and I don't know if that made sense, but you know what I mean. And he's taken lots of shots. I think last season he had the highest amount of shots for a defender. So if he can maybe get a bit luckier, finally put a few of them in the net. But I'm fairly happy for 5.5 with Pedro Porro. Ideally, I think I'd like a Dogie for 5 million, but he is just back from surgery, and I think he'll play his first match this weekend against Bayern. So it'd be interesting to see what type of minutes he gets. But yeah, so let's get into the next defender, which is Trent. So Trent has been in every single one of my drafts so far. I just feel like he's probably the best value defender we have at 7 million. He plays at Ipswich, and his fixture run for the next 6 or 7 is absolutely ridiculous. And of course they've a new manager, and we don't know how they're going to line up. But I just feel like Trent, regardless of who's managing him, he can do very, very well. We know he's a player that has a lethal pass on him, and he likes to get forward and even take some set pieces. So I feel like 7 million is a really, really generous price. And I'm very happy to start the season with him. And of course, if you don't like Trent, you can move him down to any player in the game, really, because he's the most expensive. So he gives a bit of flexibility. So we'll get on to Aina next. I originally had Miguel on goal, and I wanted Munoz, but I kind of switched Henderson for Miguel and Aina for Munoz so I could get 0.5 more, which is basically the same thing. Munoz has way more attacking threat, don't get me wrong, but Aina, I feel like he played for the 4th best defense stats wise last season. And I just remember watching him against Tottenham, and he ripped us apart. It was really weird, and I think they'll play a 5 at the back this season, so he might even play wing back and get forward a bit more. But yeah, I feel like Aina is really good value for 4.5, and I'm not seeing a lot of people pick him. So that completes the back three. Let's get on to the midfield. So in midfield we have 4. We have Rodgers, Eze, Mo Salah, and Brennan Johnson. Now I know on paper it's fairly weak, but which we'll get into. We have another player on the bench who will be quite useful for us. But this 4 in the middle, we have Rodgers. We'll start with Rodgers. Rodgers is West Ham away first game of the season, and he's been lighting up pre-season. He looks very, very sharp, and I feel like 5 million for anyone that even starts, never mind a team like Villa, is good value. There are other options that I was tinkering around with in this position, and as you can imagine, this is just the enabler. But like the likes of Bob or Amad Diallo with Rashford's injury, But yeah, you could put any of those 2 or 3 in Rodgers' position, and I'd be fairly happy. It'd be interesting to see specifically what happens with Bob, with Foden. I don't know if he's going to be there for game week 1. But imagine getting that Ipswich fixture with Bob. That'd be lethal. But yeah, Rodgers is in that position. He mightn't be anything special, but for 5 million, good value. Next is Eze, who has also been another player who's featured in nearly every single draft I've made. I just feel like 7 million is a fairly ridiculous price. He should be 8 or plus. But yeah, Brentford away and decent fixtures to start the season. He's a talismanic player and he's on penalties and free kicks. And usually anything that goes well for Palace is through Eze. So not much more to say on him. I'm sure everyone has been saying the same about him. Next is Mo Salah. So Salah probably be my game week 1 captain. I just feel like Ipswich away, I can't not start the season with him. And again, I know we're always talking about the new manager, but even in pre-season, he can still score a goal. So I've not much to say about Salah. So let's get into the next player, which is Brennan Johnson. Now, he's an interesting one. I've been thinking around with him and Kulusevski. In pre-season, Kulusevski's been playing up top and Brennan Johnson on the wing. Now, Brennan Johnson hasn't been as good as Kulusevski. But Brennan Johnson's here for a reason, which I'll get into in a minute. Initially, I did have Kulusevski. He's been unreal in pre-season. But it looks like we're potentially going to sign a striker. Whether that is Dominic Solanke. We won't get too much into the Dominic Solanke Ivan Toney debate. If you're asking me, I prefer Ivan Toney. But age-wise, Dominic Solanke makes more sense. But yeah, Brennan Johnson, I feel like will create a lot of high-quality assists for the coming season. Low, hard drills across the box, in the 6-yard box, for a striker to tap in. So regardless of who's playing up top, I feel like we'll create good chances. So that's why I think Brennan Johnson could have a very, very good season. And I do expect him to start on the right. Now, we have 2 more pre-season games against Bayern Munich. We play them twice. Once in Korea, I believe, and once in the Tottenham Stadium. As the games go on in pre-season, you'd like to think that our main lineup will be starting to take shape. So let's see if Brennan or Kulu starts on the right. I'm going to think it's going to be Brennan because he's better one-on-one. But let's see. So that's the midfield, and we'll get into the front 3. So the front 3 consists of Alexander Isak, Haaland, and João Pedro. So let's start with Isak. I mean, I feel like everyone has him. He's a player almost like Eze and Salah. He's been in nearly everyone's drafts, but it makes sense. 8.5 million is very generous. And he is the talisman for Newcastle, in my opinion. And he's also on penalties. He's an absolute monster, and I'd absolutely love him. But Southampton at home, he's even he could be a captaincy choice, and Newcastle have some of the best fixtures initially for the first 5 or 6 games. So he's a no-brainer for me. Next, we've the man that I've never spent too much time trying to own, which is Erling Haaland. I know you're probably sick of me saying that I'm the no Haaland guy, but if you didn't know, I'm the no Haaland guy. But yeah, 15 million for Haaland. This is the first draft he's made his debut in, and yeah, don't get me wrong, I genuinely could see Haaland getting 30 to 35 goals this season if he stays fit. Whether he stays fit is another question, but he's playing pre-season, so I wouldn't be surprised if he is fully fit and Pep's just trying to get into people's minds. But yeah, Chelsea away to start the season, then that lovely Ipswich at home. For me, I've nothing against Haaland, and this draft looks very, very nice with him in. The main thing with Haaland for me is I want a piece of that City attack, and if I don't go Haaland, there's no other City attackers I feel comfortable putting in that's not him. And again, he is the main man. He's on penalties as well, and it looks like City could be on for another title if Arsenal don't chase him. So Erling Haaland, not much else to say. João Pedro is next, who is back in training, which is interesting. I feel like 5.5 is an unreal value for a player that's on penalties. Now, he doesn't have the greatest fixtures, but we have a player on the bench that will rotate very nicely with him. So I just feel like 5.5 is unreal for João Pedro, and he absolutely creased Tottenham last season. We're very happy with that, but yeah, I think you can't really go wrong with a 5.5 enabler. Like I said, 5 million you want starts, and then 5.5 I mean, we're getting penalties and Brighton's striker. So, great value. Let's get on to the bench. So on the bench we have Poulsen. I just have him just as a filler. I just want to say with Turner, a lot of people have Turner. He's third choice keeper, but he will go down in value if you have him and everyone gets rid of him. So just a thing to keep in mind. You might be 0.1 down near the start of the season. Then we have Nkunku, Johnson, and Barco. So Nkunku is the best value player in the game, behind probably Eze. In my opinion anyway, and he is having an amazing pre-season as well. So he's 6.5 million. He plays City in the first game, that's why he's on the bench. I just don't feel comfortable starting a player versus City on game week 1, but he will interchange very, very well with João Pedro's fixtures. And even when the likes of Spurs play Arsenal, you could bench Kulusevski for him, or a Rodgers. So there is a good bit of rotation, and I do like the fact that you can have that flexibility. So we have Johnson for Ipswich on the bench. He plays Southampton at some point, so he might be useful, but he is going to start for Ipswich. He started all pre-season at right back for him, and he could get forward a bit, so I'm very happy to keep Johnson as my 4 million. And next is Barco, who's getting a lot of attention on Twitter. So Everton away at first game, and again, not great fixtures, but then he does have a few nice fixtures after the first 4. And when, like I said, when Spurs play Arsenal, you could play Barco. And if you don't want to play Aina all the time, you have a nice rotation with Johnson, Barco, and Aina. So that concludes the team. Let me know what you think of this team. I personally really like it, and I don't know whether I'm going to go no Haaland, no Salah, no whatever this season, but I'm trying to keep all the doors open and keep every possibility. The only weakness I see in this team is the likes of Rodgers. Of course, he's done very, very well so far, but it'd be interesting to see if he can fit in that Villa team and get consistent starts. Another one is probably João Pedro. João Pedro is only back from injury, and he does often get injured, so if he can stay fit, he will be a great option. So that brings us to the end of the video. Be sure to like the video if you found it useful. Be much appreciated, lads. I'm still trying to grow the channel, and I'm trying my best to make the content a bit better step by step. So let me know how I can improve, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. So see you in the next, lads.